Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bang on Sales Show. Today, my guest is Immacolata Bättig. Immacolata, or Ima, I should say, is the Business Development Associates Manager at Salesforce. She's a student worker program lead. So Ima is responsible for hiring and developing graduates into high-performing sales development teams. She designs and develops student worker program in alignment with sales development leadership, and talent acquisition. Now, Ima's passion for sales has driven her to stay up to date with the latest industry trends, and this has given her a deep understanding of the SaaS landscape. Ima's leadership style is centered on collaboration, communication, and mentorship. I love it. And by empowering team members with the tools they need to succeed, she has built high-performing teams that consistently deliver. Amazing. So welcome, Ima. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, and thanks for having me. It sounds so much better when you read it. I should get you to do an audio, and I'll have that as my LinkedIn intro.
I hear that a lot, actually. Yeah, maybe I should have a side gig, just like narrating people's LinkedIn profiles.
Absolutely. You should diversify your income streams. This is a good opportunity.
Got the wheels turning in my head now. Brilliant. So listen, like I say, thanks for coming on. I guess as a way of kicking things off, do you want to maybe say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So my name's Ima, as you rightfully said. I'm originally from Munich, but I've been living in Dublin for the last, oh my God, what is this, like 7 or 8 years? I don't know. I feel Irish at this point. I'm definitely, my skin is Irish. I'm very white, but I love it. And the reason why I decided to move over to Ireland is because it's a great opportunity to join tech, and more specifically tech sales. So as you said, I am really passionate about sales and sales development. I've had a really long and successful career as an account executive. I've learned a lot. I made a ton of mistakes. And that's why I've decided a few years ago I wanted to kind of give back and help those early in their career avoid making some of the mistakes that I did. So I joined GradGuide back, I think it'll be 4 years this year, as a mentor, and then moved into the role that I'm in now at Salesforce, leading the graduate program for Central Europe.
Brilliant, brilliant. So doing what you do, or your background generally, I know you're big on coaching. Mm-hmm. Coaching is, it's a bit of a buzzword. It's quite vague. Could you tell me about, before we started recording, we were talking about there's some misconceptions around what coaching is, what it isn't. Could we dig into that a bit?
Yeah, I think most people, think that a coach is, you look at your football coaches, and you're like, hey, there's somebody on the sidelines, and they're like telling you, they're providing the strategy, and, they assemble the team. And coaching really fundamentally is very different, because the purpose of coaching as defined by the ICF, so that's the governing body for coaches. It defines coaching as, a way to help the person, the coachee, find the answers within themselves. So fundamentally, the job of a coach is actually need to ask really good questions and help the person who, has a challenge or who wants to accomplish a goal, get there by themselves. And that's why I believe, particularly if you're working with early talent, so people who are moving into sales, as graduates, or typical like sales business development roles, where this is kind of the start of your sales career, or even account executives that are first time account executives. Coaching can be super beneficial, because it helps build that confidence, because if you find the answers yourself, it has like an incredible impact on confidence, and confidence is what you lack when you're kind of just starting your career. So it's super beneficial for the coachee, but also takes the weight off managers, because they don't have to come up with the answers. They don't need to figure everything out for the coachee. They just need to be there and ask the right questions. And there are question banks that you can find online. You can build your own question bank after a while. I believe that in the early talent programs, it's beneficial if you have a background in sales. So you can have that kind of mentorship component, which is more the, I'm going to show you, because I've done this before. So here's my point of view. But having the combination between coaching and mentorship, I think is really, really critical, particularly if you're working with, people early in their career.
Right. Yeah. And this might be a little bit outside the remit of the work you do, but what do you think the role of coaching is ongoing throughout someone's career?
I think everybody should have like a coach, not like, don't rely on your manager to be a coach, but just get an external coach. Most companies these days have some sort of education budget. A lot of companies even use services like BetterUp and the likes to access, coaching. Coaching can help, particularly now. A lot of people are concerned. What's happening in the tech industry is not pleasant. It's not pleasant for those who remain. It's not pleasant for those who depart. You're kind of in this limbo. People are questioning, like, is this still the right choice? Am I, still in the right place? And, frustration builds up and it can quickly derail. So having a coach is kind of like having your own personal soundboard. Their job is to, help you on the track. Sometimes they might ask you some challenging questions. So I believe everyone in their career, should have a coach and should have regular interactions with a coach.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that, because I agree totally. And this is kind of like the difference between training and coaching, right? You could give someone some initial support, whether that's some upfront training when they first come into a role, or just generally early on in their career. But for me at least, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be reinforced and practiced and bounced off of a mentor or a coach or something like that, just to keep that upward trajectory, right? Because I've neglected it at times, and I know when I start to fall off in various different ways. So yeah. You touched on coaching broadly is really about asking the right questions and guiding someone to help reach their own conclusions, their own answers, and so on. But digging a bit deeper, what does good coaching look like in your world? How do you approach it?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, the coachee needs to understand that the majority of work will be on them, and they will want to change. If there's no willingness to change, if there's no willingness to, achieve a goal or, move in a direction or overcome an obstacle, coaching is not going to work. So it does require, the coachee, the person you are coaching, to have a certain willingness and kind of go, right, I want to work on myself. I want to get better, or I want to, accomplish something. And then it's really more about understanding, like, the GROW methodology is very commonly used methodology. It's easy to adopt. It stands for, a number of different things, and you can just Google it online. It's pretty straightforward in terms of, what kind of questions you could ask. A lot of companies are actually investing in, having the GROW methodology baked into their process. But as a coach, the most important thing you need to understand is your job is not to change the other person. Your job is not to teach them something. Your job is not to, tell them what to do. The only job you have is, to believe that the person you're coaching has all the answers within themselves. And your job is to help them find these answers. But you need to kind of like take a step back and don't push them in a certain direction. So asking open-ended questions. So actually what we do in sales, so coaching can be very beneficial for sellers as well. So if you learn how to do that, particularly when you work with industries where essentially you're doing change management, like manufacturing businesses that are moving into digital landscape, you're dealing with a lot of change management. So coaching can be very beneficial in this regard as well.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, it's funny because when we started talking, I noted that down, the coaching versus selling, or coaching, not versus selling. I mean, it is, isn't it? It's, you're helping to, you can't just go into a sales conversation and just boom, here's my conclusion. I think that if you take, say, like the challenger approach, there is a place for coming in with certain, once you've earned the right to come in with certain insights and challenge certain perceptions and so on. But generally speaking, it's all about asking the right questions. And yes, you want to guide the conversation in a certain direction. So maybe it's potentially slightly different to some coaching scenarios, but I can definitely see the relationship there. You mentioned the GROW methodology. I believe the R stands for reality. So part of that, at least my very basic understanding of it, is understanding where you are right now, or where the team is, or whatever that may be. And part of that is identifying your strengths, your weaknesses. Could you talk a bit about that? Because do you think that there's merit to focusing more, like playing more to our strengths, or should we really try to focus on developing our weaknesses, or does it really depend? What do you think?
So I don't think there's like a real kind of black and white approach. It's like you choose one or you choose the other. Personally, I've learned that focusing on my strengths and focusing on understanding how my strengths, play in my favor in my job, help me understand what situations I can naturally shine in without even putting a lot of effort in, because all of us have strengths, but all of us have different strengths, and they appear differently in the work that we do, or in the way we work. So having that understanding of how your strengths work, and your strengths can actually become weaknesses as well. So that's an important factor to kind of take into consideration. But what's most important is, like, if you just think about it from, a perspective of, would you prefer to spend 20% of your time doing something that you completely suck at? Sorry, I hope we can say that. Or would you prefer to spend 20% of your time doing something that you love doing, you enjoy doing, that energizes you? I mean, that's an absolutely no-brainer. Everybody's going to go, well, obviously, the latter. Like, I'm going to do what I shine. And this is where, we're kind of like, our brains are wired to focus on the negatives and fixing what's broken, but you don't want to fix what's broken. You need to be conscious of it, and you need to understand how that can, have an impact on your role, on your career, and so forth. But I wouldn't waste my time trying to fix it. I would try and, find an area or a type of work where I can naturally shine, where I can bring in my talent, the things that I do well, without actually having to invest a lot, because I do these things naturally well. And most people are great. If you ask anyone, like, hey, what are your top 3 weaknesses? They'll probably tell you 10. If you ask them, what are your top 3 strengths? They'll be there 5 minutes thinking, well, that's a good question. I don't know. And this is where the kind of whole conundrum and dilemma starts. So learn what your strengths are and how they appear in your day-to-day work. And then find opportunities where you can leverage these strengths, where these strengths might be needed. So I think that's really important.
Just to challenge that a bit, though, for example, I know that a weakness of mine, if we're getting very specific here, is sometimes having certain types of uncomfortable conversations. Maybe a little bit of, I'm quite non-confrontational, which isn't always good when you're negotiating whatever it may be, or something like that, with certain types of personalities and different personas and so on. So I feel like for me, that's something that I have improved on for sure, but there's still room for improvement there, and I feel like that's not really an area I can neglect in some scenarios. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there will always be things that we don't do really well. I'm like this as well. I try to avoid uncomfortable things that make me uncomfortable. Now, as a coach, what I would ask you is, what makes this uncomfortable for you, so that, you can start understanding where is this actually coming from, because it's not the conversation per se, it's how it makes you feel. And it might make you feel because, you don't want to upset the other person, but then that might just be an assumption. So a lot of the things that, we think about are just assumptions that we make in our heads. So as a coach, I would ask you, like, if you would have to describe that feeling, what would it be? And, there's tools that coaches use. And then try and identify, situations where how you could prevent these conversations from happening. Yeah. So what can you actively do to minimize, the exposure? Or is there something that could help you? Like, for instance, my husband and I were very, like, my top strengths are his bottom strengths and vice versa. So it's really good, particularly when it comes to these kind of things, like uncomfortable conversations, or, really and when I'm not sure about something, when I get insecure, I'll ask him and I go, hey, what do you think about this? Like, here's what I need to do. And I don't know, it makes me feel uncomfortable. And then, he was just like, why would it make you feel uncomfortable? And then he'll give me an example to kind of say, like, putting it in a different perspective. And then if I look at it from that perspective, then it's like, well, actually, yeah, that makes sense. So it kind of like eases that away. So you start spotting strengths that you might not have in others, and then you can leverage those for yourself as well to give you the confidence, or to, help you in these situations.
Yeah, I like that. And I mean, I don't mind sharing this. I think that while you're talking, I'm just reflecting on that. And it's amazing the power of just asking the question, because it makes me think about something you said at the start, which is an obvious thing, which is that if you have minimal experience, naturally your confidence is going to be lower. And something I can relate to that, because for me, my confidence is a lot lower if I feel like I'm going into a conversation and I'm maybe not fully prepared, I'm not equipped with all of the facts, or maybe, it's a new job and I don't fully know all the ins and outs of the product or the industry I'm selling into, that sort of thing. And perhaps that's what it is it's not feeling fully equipped for the conversation, feeling like I'm going to get found out here. Maybe it's good old imposter syndrome or something like that. But so it's interesting. And I mean, we're showing in real time here the power of just one simple question, and we could probably dig even deeper than that. But yeah, so strengths, just digging a bit deeper into that. I mean, you touched on some of it there, but like, how do we, in real tactical terms, like, how do we really identify our, in a sales role, whether, whatever sales role it is you choose, but how do we figure out what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, where should I be putting my attention?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Mark. And there is many different, strengths assessments that you can do. Some of them are paid, like the Clifton Strengths is a really popular one used by a lot of organizations. Personally, I leverage the VIA character strengths. It's a free assessment that you can do. It's free also if you're a manager and you want to assess the strengths in your team, help them kind of build more awareness around it. You can, sign up and then extend a link, and you'll be able to access, I think it's a 25-minute survey. There's another one called the Wing Finder, which is really good as well. It's super accurate. It's actually shocking how accurate it is. When you think about it, I would encourage anyone to go to your kind of like closest 2 or 3 people and ask them, like, hey, what do you think makes me stand out? Like, when you think of me, like, what do you think makes me stand out? And then do the assessment and compare, like, write down what they've said, write down what you think about yourself, and then write down what you get in the assessment. And it's actually shocking how little we know ourselves, particularly our strengths. So I did the VIA one. And then it's more around understanding. Now, you can do this with the help of a coach, or you can try and do it yourself, but maybe focus on your top 5 strengths at the beginning, and then take a look at, right, where do they surface? On the VIA side, there's some examples that you can do, or there's like a more kind of like descriptive information around how they could appear. But for instance, like when I first heard my top 5 strengths. I was like, great, like, what do I do with this now? But it's my top 5 are creativity, curiosity, social intelligence, kindness, and love. And I was like, okay, what do you do with that? But then I kind of realized that creativity for me, it's very easy to come up with, a solution to a problem. So when it comes to problem solving and looking at things in a more abstract way than maybe other people can, like, I naturally do that well, but I also enjoy doing it. I like, if I need to figure something out, if I need to analyze something, it really gets me excited. So that's why it's number 1, obviously. And similar for curiosity, like I'm always, and social intelligence, I've always been a people person ever since I was little. It's actually shocking because I did this test and then I asked my mom. I read all of, I think there's 24, 26 character strengths, and I read all of them out to my mom. And then I read them again and I said, okay, if you think that I have this one, then just say yes. And then I read them again, and I kid you not, she guessed all 5 of them right. I was shocked. I was like, wow, this is actually scary. But yeah, that's what helped me a lot. And of course, I had a professional coach. God bless her, Claudia. I love you. She's done some transformative work on me for sure.
Amazing. I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here, or I'm going to play, let's say, SDRs or AE's advocate, shall we say. I feel like there'll be some people watching this that will say, Emma, that sounds great, but it sounds a bit, and I know that it's actionable what you're saying, but there'll be some people who might say that it feels a bit fluffy, a bit touchy-feely, okay, kindness and love, like, what am I supposed to do with that? How's that going to help me hit my number this quarter or this month or whatever? So, maybe in very simple sort of tactical terms, let's say I have a one-to-one with my manager, at some point this week, for example. Is there anything I can do in terms of maybe looking at the numbers, looking at some conversion rates in my deals or connect rate, whatever it may be? Is there anything I can look at specifically to say, hey, here's a gap, here's something I can take as an action point or a growth area or something like that?
Yeah. Well, of course, strengths are important. Understanding how your strengths, appear in your day-to-day, whether they appear as, sometimes they can be blockers too. Like my creativity strength can be a blocker too, because it means that, I always jump to, things and try to, fix something, or I try to create a new path that can be overwhelming for some people, who are not ready for that. So it's understanding kind of like the balance. But in any sales role, and I wish I'd invested more time to learn this earlier, but in any sales or sales development role, metrics are everything. And I'm not talking about your managers tracking you on some vanity metrics. I'm talking about you being able to analyze your own performance through metrics and understanding, how, that whole flywheel works. Because yes, you can improve yourself, you can, work on certain things, but let's face it, if there's, crap pipeline coming in, no matter how, how much you prepare, no matter how well, your ICP, it's not going to work. So understanding, how some of these things play a role, like you don't want to waste your time following up with shitty leads just because your manager told you you need to make your 30, 40, 50 calls a day. If those leads are crap and you know that they're crap because you've done an analysis and you know that they have a historically poor conversion rate, then you gotta, bridge the gap with outbound, and you're gonna have to either, flag it and say, hey, these leads aren't really converting, and here are the stats for it, or, you focus your attention on outbound and you kind of go, right, if there's nothing coming in inbound, I'm going to have to, double down on my outbound efforts. And understanding how many steps do I need to take, or how many prospects do I need to call in order to get a meeting? How many meetings, will actually turn into an opportunity? And how many of those opportunities will then convert at each stage? is super, super important if you want to come out winning at the end.
And that's the point, right? It's about you winning. It's for you, right? It's for your gain at the end of the day. So it's well worth doing it. And, it's funny. I told this story before we started recording, but I feel like I've come full circle on the quality versus quantity thing. Or maybe not full circle, because I think there's a balance to be struck between the two. But, I started my career in like boiler room telemarketing environments, measured purely on dials and talk time, and you're absolutely right. You end up following up on just absolute garbage that is never going to go anywhere, but you kind of feel like you have to, because you've got a manager breathing down your neck on KPIs and so on. When I started working in more corporate environments, I feel like I got quite soft at a certain point, because I started really hyper personalizing things and really doing like obsessive amounts of research into prospects before contacting them. And it doesn't necessarily pay off. It depends on the, what you're selling and the level of the market and so on. But yeah, I definitely realized at a certain point that, and I'm going to steal your line, but it is true that sales ultimately is a numbers game. Now, how you define that depends on a lot of things, but yeah, you have to know your numbers, and yeah, metrics are everything, as you say. So anyway, I'm talking a lot. I mean, do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. And I think today, unfortunately, metrics are often used kind of like as a carrot and stick approach. Sometimes they're just blindly followed because, people don't know how to interpret them. At the end of the day, everyone owns their own metrics. So if there's an SDR, if there's a BDR, AE, doesn't matter. If you're just blindly following what your manager is drilling you on, then you're not doing yourself a favor, because you need to understand how your own flywheel works. Every territory is different. Every, target audience that you're selling to might be different. Volume does matter, but so does value. So the only way you can achieve that balance is if you can analyze and interpret these metrics yourself, and then take a look at the people who are on top of the dashboard and analyze their metrics and understand, right, where do they yield a better conversion? Because, if you look at the whole funnel, we're talking about everything from incoming leads. So let's be real. Sometimes you might just get lucky and get a bluebird. We've all had that in our careers, and you celebrate it like the hero, but you didn't do jack shit. You just got a bluebird, and it was pure luck. And that can happen too. But success continuously by no means is just pure luck. Yeah, you might get lucky from time to time. You get a good lead in, and you just get a customer who's ready to buy. They're your perfect ICP fit. They're flush with cash, and you close a deal of a lifetime. But most of the time, it's consistency and doing the right things every single day. And the people who do that, they will always come out successful in the end. It's a long-term process. It's not like a quick win or a quick fix here. No, if you show up every day and you do your hard work, you analyze and interpret your results and your metrics, so that you can kind of like fine tune, and you can kind of see, hey, I dropped off here with my conversion rate. What's happening? Maybe you're getting different objections. Okay, how can I handle these better? Again, you bring this back to your manager for coaching. Find the answers. Go out and see where you're falling short, because we all fall short somewhere.
I think that's the perfect note to end on.
Mm-hmm.
So well said. No, truly. Brilliant. Look, Emma, thank you so much for this. Like I said, you've got the wheels turning in my head about a few things. So yeah, I hope this is of value to anybody else watching this as well. So is there any other parting words you'd like to share?
The only thing I want to leave with everyone is, when you think of coaching, always think of that. A mentor will answer your question, and a coach will question your answers. So if you're into coaching, definitely go out. There's many courses, certifications that you can do. But even if you don't have access to coaching within your work setting, go and find a professional coach. It's going to be a game changer for you, whether you want to focus on your career, improve your, kind of work-life balance, or, kind of like find your identity again after this whole kind of like tech shit show that we're in. It doesn't matter. Go and find a coach. They're fantastic to help you get to where you want to be.
Brilliant. Well said. Well said. Where can people connect with you, Emma?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn, of course. I am pretty active on LinkedIn. So yeah, shoot me a message, or you can follow me. I always share my point of view around everything sales related, but also of course coaching related. And yeah, I've created my own website now, as I'll be moving into the kind of coaching space long term. So yeah, if you're looking for a coach, I'll be more than happy to provide coaching for those.
Great. I know we're at time, but do you want to just say a couple of quick words about that? What's the website?
Yeah, so you can find it on my LinkedIn page. So it's it's my first name, last name.com. So I let everybody figure that one out, or you can just go on my LinkedIn page. And yeah, at the moment I'm doing this on the side because I have my full-time job. So I can only take on a limited amount of clients at a time. But yes, I'm focused on helping people build their sales or sales leadership career. So if anybody is interested in upping their own game, I'd be more than happy to coach you through.
Link in the description. Check it out. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Bye-bye.